Hey, if you're thinking about starting World of Warcraft in 2026, the game can feel overwhelming. There are 20 years of expansions, dozens of systems, a massive world, and about 1,000 different directions you could go from the moment you log in. In this video, I want to do something very simple. I'm going to show you how to start WoW today as a new player. What actually matters in the beginning, and what you can safely ignore for now, so the game doesn't become too confusing before it even starts. Before we go further, I want to address something very quickly, because some people care about this, and some people don't. This became obvious to me when I launched my first Tarkov video and talked about my skill level. The question is, why should you listen to anything I say about WoW? I made this video because I recently helped two friends get into WoW, both coming from Tarkov actually. One of them had never played WoW before, and the other hadn't touched the game in almost 20 years. And watching them go through the early game made one thing very clear. What feels obvious if you played WoW for years is incredibly confusing if you're new. They got lost, picked up random quests, and they didn't know what mattered. So this video is basically built around that. What helped them, and what I would do differently if I started today. So very briefly on why I think I'm qualified to give advice with confidence. I've been playing WoW since 05, spent roughly 18,000 hours in the game, played PvP at a high level early on, and later focused on endgame PvE content, with multiple cutting-edge achievements, a 0.1% M+ title and a Hall of Fame kill on Mythic Sakura, which basically means I was among the first roughly 4,000 players in the world to clear the hardest raid content at the time. I can now combine that experience with the recent teaching of my friends to give you the condensed optimal advice. Let's begin where every journey in WoW begins: character creation. When you first start the game, you will choose two things: a race and a class. The race mostly determines how your character looks and which faction you belong to. From a gameplay perspective, the differences are extremely small, so honestly, for now, just pick something you like visually. I'm going to state the obvious thing here: don't play Alliance. For the Horde. The more important decision is your class. Classes determine how you actually play the game. In very simple terms, WoW has three main roles. Tanks control enemies and protect the group, healers keep everyone alive, and damage dealers focus on killing things as efficiently as possible. Most classes can fill multiple roles, but if you're completely new, the safest choice is usually a damage dealer. It lets you focus on learning the game without worrying about leading the group or keeping everyone alive. Now, one of the biggest learnings from teaching my friends, I showed them all of the classes in-game to give them a feel for what they might like or don't like. I will do the same for you in a future video. But for now, what you pick actually doesn't matter too much, because you're most likely going to change that again before committing to a class and getting to max level. Seeing me play it at a high level is going to be completely different from you actually playing it yourself for the first time. So you kinda need to play it to get a feel for it. After creating your character, you will begin the tutorial area called Exile's Reach. This is basically the game teaching you the fundamentals: movement, combat, quests, and basic mechanics. Just follow the quests here. It's designed to be straightforward and it does a pretty good job of easing new players into the game. Once you finish the tutorial for the first time, the game will put you on the Dragon Isles. This is where things really open up, and also where many players start getting confused. The Dragon Isles used to be a high-level zone, but since have been scaled down to grant you a very smooth 10 to 70 or 10 to 80 level experience. I would highly recommend you do that on your first playthrough. That's an option to play a different story, and I will explain that in the future, but for now you should follow the Dragon Isles and stick primarily to the main story there. The main story is the one where you have that small shield icon around your quest marker. This is both true for your quest log and for the map. World of Warcraft has an enormous amount of content: old expansions, side quests, random storylines, profession, reputation systems, and events. It's very easy to walk into a random direction and suddenly spend 10 hours doing something that doesn't actually move you forward. This is something I've seen happen to my friends who recently started playing. They begin the game, get distracted by side quests or old zones, and eventually lose track of what they were even trying to do. But honestly, getting lost in WoW is part of the charm of the game. The world is huge, and exploration is a big part of why people love it. But if your goal is to understand how the game works, I would strongly recommend one simple rule: focus on reaching max level first. The main story is a very good cohesive narrative, and it's designed to keep you on pace. Ignore most of the side distractions for now, just progress through the game until you reach the current level cap, which is level 90. The reason is simple: World of Warcraft is fundamentally endgame focused. The main systems, dungeons, raids, Mythic Plus, seasonal gear progression, competitive content, already start at max level. That's where the structure of the game becomes clear. Even if none of that content is what you enjoy, most of the content in WoW gets much simpler the higher level you are. So if you want to collect all of the mounts, for example, it's still the best path to go for max level first and then turn around and do all of the older content. At max level is usually where you find most of the social interactions as well, which is one of the greatest parts about WoW. Before you get to max level, the game can feel a bit like wandering through a massive museum. Interesting things everywhere, but not always obvious what you're supposed to do. Now there are two small things I would recommend setting up early that will help you a lot later. The first is keybinds. Many new players click their abilities with the mouse. That works at the very beginning, but it quickly becomes limiting as you gain more abilities. Binding your skills to your keyboard makes the game much more fluid and prepares you for harder content later. Keybinds are a very personal thing, but a good starting point is having your main action bar set to 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, and then replacing the later less reachable keys with things like Q, E, R, T and F. I will make a video on my keyboard layout and how it actually evolved over the years. One important additional thing about keybinds is to immediately bind strafe left and right to A and D. This will improve your level of play significantly compared to anyone not doing that. It allows you to side strafe during combat while you're controlling your vision with your mouse. I will go into more depth about movement in a different video. For now, trust me and change these keybinds. The second major hurdle for many is the user interface. The default UI that WoW gives you is completely fine for starting the game. You don't need to install a bunch of add-ons immediately. However, if you eventually want to do harder content like Mythic Plus dungeons and high-level raiding, most players adjust the interface with add-ons to get a clearer information output. I'll make a separate video explaining how to go from a basic default interface to a clean setup that works well for difficult content. But for now, the default UI is absolutely good enough. So now if we simplify everything we talked about into one clear path, starting WoW today looks roughly like this. Create a character you like, complete the tutorial island, arrive on the Dragon Isles. Follow the main questline and focus on reaching max level. And once you get there, that's when the real structure of the game opens up. Dungeons, raids, Mythic Plus, PvP and all of the systems that make WoW what it is. It's a huge game with an enormous amount of history behind it, and it can look intimidating from the outside. But once you understand the basic structure, it becomes surprisingly easy to navigate. So if you are just getting started, welcome to Azeroth. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, I would appreciate a like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye bye.